In this week's news, local council ends official prayer. 200 years of the gospel in New Zealand. And an unexpected Christmas gift for Tony Abbott.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, it's great you could be with us for our last record in focus before Christmas. And how are you, Danielle?
Oh dear. You are a worry.
Reindeer?
Oh my goodness. What is this world coming to, Kent Kingston? But glad you finally grabbed the Christmas spirit. It's good to see.
Well, look, if you can't beat them, join them. Although, honestly, Danielle, it's not really Santa and Rudolph that interests me. It's really the miracle of that baby in a manger.
Yeah, well, peace on earth and goodwill to all men, so they say. And I tell you what, guys, it's more meaningful than ever at this time in history.
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? Well, James Standish will be joining us a bit later to answer the question, is there really a war on Christmas? Sue Rad will be in the studio with some advice for people who think they're gluten intolerant but probably aren't.
Oh, just in time for Christmas menu planning.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll also have some special Christmas music today from a man who's been using music as a part of his mission and church planting strategy.
Wow, sounds great, Kent. Ready for the news?
All yours, Danielle.
The decision of a local council in Victoria to scrap opening prayers has sparked criticism, with some Christian representatives describing the move as intolerant. According to Christian Today, the vote by the Surf Coast Shire Council, based in Torquay, passed with a strong majority, 8-1. Council will now open official meetings with a pledge rather than prayer to avoid councillors taking offence. The single dissenting councillor described the move as disrespectful, and the Australian Christian Lobby said the council is turning its back on Australia's Christian heritage. Australian Catholic leaders have made what are described as unprecedented links between celibacy and child sexual abuse. An activity statement report from the Church's Truth, Justice and Healing Council says the Church's culture of clericalism may be geared to priests having power over others rather than serving others. A culture of obedience, closed environments and the requirement that priests remain celibate were also identified as possible contributing factors to abuse. According to the Australian newspaper, the report is the first in the world where church representatives have publicly admitted to the risks associated with celibacy. A year after Typhoon Haiyan devastated the Philippines, the region has again been hit by wild storms, which this time killed at least 27 people and caused widespread floods. According to Adventist Review, the government has been praised for its effective evacuation of more than 1 million people, a move that doubtless saved many lives. Nevertheless, thousands of homes were still damaged or destroyed, and residents will need a lot of support before they can get back on their feet. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, has dispatched workers to the worst-hit areas, where they will cooperate with government agencies and NGOs in the relief effort. ADRA's ability to assist in future disaster and development projects has been boosted by 78,000 New Zealand dollars thanks to strong public support at a charity fun run in Auckland. More than 1,100 runners pounded the pavement along the picturesque Mission Bay shoreline in an event assisted by 120 or so volunteers. The ADRA New Zealand Fun Run has become a fixture on the calendar for many Aucklanders. The event has been held every year for more than a decade. And still in New Zealand, the island nation of 4.5 million people has a very special Christmas to celebrate this year. It will be 200 years to the day since the first Christian worship service was held on New Zealand soil. On Christmas Day 1814, the Anglican minister Samuel Marsden preached a sermon at Oihi in the far north of New Zealand, where he also worked with local Maori tribes to establish a mission station. An ecumenical commemoration and Thanksgiving service will be held at the site on Christmas Day this year to celebrate the bicentenary. After the killing of 2 men in Vanuatu as suspected witches, churches in the Pacific Islands are searching for solutions. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands says practical solutions need to be put into place to deal with situations where a sudden death is blamed on sorcery.
They try at funerals to have the medical certificate read out, asking that there would be a medical certificate and from a health worker, from a doctor, and that be read out at funerals in order to try to circumvent someone coming up with another reason.
Seventh-day Adventist leaders in Papua New Guinea say it's usually vulnerable members of the community, the elderly, single women or otherwise isolated people, who are scapegoated and accused of sorcery. Prime Minister Tony Abbott was presented with a surprise Christmas gift this week, solar panels to grace the roof of his official Sydney residence, Kirribilli House. The gift came from a group of carol-singing church leaders, Anglican, Uniting, Evangelical and others, who raised the money to buy the solar panels and delivered them to Mr Abbott's electoral office. The Common Grace Christian Alliance is concerned at Australia's 70% drop in renewable energy investment this year and wants to encourage the government to increase its renewable energy target. And that's the news for this week. Kent.
Thanks, Danielle. Now, I know that you usually like to finish the news on a positive note, but I'm afraid we have some sad news for us all today, and that's that this was the last news bulletin that we'll hear from you, Danielle.
Yes, that's right, Kent. I'm off on a new adventure next year, still in Christian media, but a bit closer to home.
Well, Danielle, you've given a lot to be here, for the years that you've been here, and we really appreciate that. And so many viewers, Danielle, have told me, your warmth and how much they appreciate that. And I'd like to tell you, it's not just an act. It is the real Danielle. It is the real you. You're a lovely person, and thanks so much for being a part of the program here.
Thank you, Kent. I love you guys, and I'm certainly going to miss InFocus. We have a great team here, but I know God has very special plans ahead, not just for me, but for all of you as well. Yeah, well, look, we're going to miss you too, Danielle, and I know our viewers will too, but you'll be happy to know that Danielle will still be appearing on InFocus for our special holiday episodes over the next 4 weeks. So stay tuned. I'll be back in a moment.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Well, around this time of year, when you look in at some of the Christian media, the story keeps coming up. There's a war on Christmas, and it's not the Grinch. It's not even James Standish here.
Well, happy holidays, Ken. I should say that right at the...
Happy holidays. It's political correctness, they say, is killing Christmas. Is this a fair enough claim?
Well, this is the background for it, and that is that, particularly in the U.S., a number of stores have gone away from saying Merry Christmas. They say Merry Christmas in the U.S., not Happy Christmas, incidentally, and they've replaced it with Happy Holidays.
Because this covers Hanukkah. It's non-religious.
And the New Year's and so forth. It's non-religious, and the idea is, maybe 90% of Americans celebrate Christmas, something along those lines. That leaves 10% who don't. Maybe this is offensive, so let's get away from this. So the claim is, here we are in a predominantly Christian country, whether it's the United States or Australia, etc., and people are not explicitly embracing Christmas like they used to. Some towns don't have manger scenes like they used to. Some schools will put in non-Christian Christmas songs or exclude it, and this is a major problem, and it's offensive. So
James, this happens in Australia. A shopping centre in Australia may or may not decide to have a traditional nativity scene displayed in their shopping centre. Is that discrimination? Is that persecution against Christians to refuse that nativity scene?
I would never say it's persecution. You and I both know I've seen real persecution, and it's not having a manger scene or not. And in fact, we all know Christmas actually isn't the date that Christ was born anyway.
Is it the thin edge of the wedge?
And shopping is not actually the centre of Christmas to begin with. I think, though, symbols do matter. And it's fair enough for Christians to say, hey, when our holiday comes along, the biggest holiday of the year in the most Christians' calendar, it's kind of nice to see in society in general that it's respected and celebrated. I grew up in Malaysia, Kent, on a little island called Penang, and we celebrated every holiday you can imagine. We had Chinese New Year and we celebrated with all. We did American Thanksgiving, we did Christmas, we did Hari Raya, which is the end of fasting for Muslims.
Oh, okay.
We did the Hindu Festival of Lights.
Oh,
We
Diwali, yeah.
That's right. We enjoyed all of them, and we went for it. And so did the culture in general. There was a really nice sort of embrace. I think the answer to having a diverse society isn't to sort of wipe out one holiday or the next. It's to embrace them all. There's room in Australia for Diwali. There's room in Australia for Chinese New Year. There's room for the end of fasting, for the Muslim end of fasting, and surely there's got to still be room for publicly acknowledging wherever we are Christmas and of course the Happy New Year.
Is there a place, let's say public school for example, where students want to express, give out Christmas cards with religious messages? Is this an area that we should be concerned about if that's discouraged?
Well, I think if it's discouraged, we should be. The speech by students should be protected, generally speaking, unless it's innately offensive, using sort of four-letter words and what have you. But outside of that, if kids want to express that they're proud to be Jewish around Hanukkah or and other times of the year, good on them. Good on them. My wife taught at a Christian school and does now again, but we used to do Hanukkah there because it's just interesting. It's a beautiful story. It's an inspiring story. Why curtail people's expression of who they are? And part of who you are is your faith.
Yeah.
And part of your faith is saying, great, it's Christmas time. I'm thankful for that. And you know what? I want to share the Christmas spirit. Nothing wrong with doing that.
There you go. Thanks so much for your insights, James.
It's a pleasure, and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for watching.
All right, and now it's over to Food in Focus.
Happy Christmas, Sue.
Thanks.
Hey, are you one of the 1 in 5 Australians who suffer from pain in the gut, especially around Christmas time, and you think it might be gluten intolerance? We looked at that a couple of weeks ago, but instead it could be FODMAPs. Now explain FODMAPs. Sue, this is why you're here.
That's right. FODMAPs is just an acronym. It stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides and polyols. And these are basically indigestible carbohydrates that are especially poorly tolerated by people with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and thereby producing symptoms.
That's because in a good body they ferment in the gut.
Well, they actually ferment in everyone's gut.
Yes.
But the problem is if you've got IBS, you tend to get a lot more fermentation, excessive amounts of wind.
Yes.
For example, it's formed, which can distend your tummy area and make you feel very uncomfortable.
Now, 1 in 5 Australians, and we're coming close to Christmas, tell us about FODMAPs versus gluten.
So FODMAPs can be found in the same foods as gluten. So FODMAPs are the carbohydrate part, gluten is actually the protein part. So often people confuse the two and think they're intolerant to gluten, but in fact it's far more common that they've got a problem in tolerating FODMAPs or certain amounts of FODMAPs than gluten. In fact, only 1% of the population has celiac disease, and they absolutely must exclude gluten for life. But people with intolerance to FODMAPs, they're much more common, and for them it's not a matter of excluding FODMAPs completely, but it's about going on a low FODMAPs diet, which we use as an investigative tool to work out which FODMAPs they're intolerant to.
Now, this is recent research at Monash in particular.
Monash University has pioneered this area in the world, and this is the best treatment any doctor can offer now, to recommend you to visit an accredited practicing dietitian who's got experience in FODMAPs to work out what's troubling you. So the way it works is this. When someone comes to sees us with IBS, having had celiac disease and other things excluded, so we know they don't have to be on a strict gluten-free diet.
Can you explain who excludes it? What do you do to find out if you have celiac disease?
Well, you should go to your doctor, and you might even be referred to a gastroenterologist. Right. It's important that they exclude more serious diseases such as celiac disease before we start tampering with things like FODMAPs. And then we put somebody on the low FODMAPs diet. So if you have a look at these foods here, they all look really healthy, but these foods here have more natural FODMAPs in them. These foods here have a lower content of FODMAPs. So you can't sort of try and do this by yourself. You really need to
go and see a nutritionist. Or
you need to, and you need to look at data from foods that have been analysed to someone who's experienced in the area. If we exclude FODMAPs or get them as low as possible in your diet, and you improve, and they found that about 75% of people significantly improve with their symptoms if they go on a low FODMAPs diet. The next thing is not to stay on FODMAPs forever.
Oh,
it could be very harmful.
That's what you do.
That's what you would think, and many people, download sheets from the internet and do this for life. This could be more, more harmful than good. What we then do is challenge them by reintroducing different families of FODMAPs to test them, to see which is a trigger for them. Once we work out which FODMAP is the problem, then we can work out at what level of that FODMAP that they can sort of tolerate. And it's really important that long term we reintroduce back important FODMAP foods like onions, like legumes, because these FODMAPs actually have what we call a prebiotic effect, meaning they are food substrates for the good gut bacteria to grow on. So you cannot be on low FODMAPs. You should not be on low FODMAPs for life. It's an investigative tool that can help many, many people. You need to do it with a health professional so we can work out what bothers you, and then we can add back a tolerated level of FODMAPs to keep your gut healthy. And the rest of you healthy as well, because everything stems from the gut. 80% of your immunity is found in the gut.
So folks, there you have it. At Christmas time, if you're suffering with the symptoms of IBS, don't assume it's gluten intolerance. You may need to go and get a diagnosis from a doctor, but then go and see a nutritionist like Sue Rad. They could visit www.surad.com, because life's more about eating mangoes at Christmas. Isn't it, Sue?
Absolutely. Enjoying all these healthy foods, but excluding things at levels that could be triggers for excessive symptoms, gut symptoms.
So, happy Christmas, Sue.
Thanks.
And happy Christmas, folks. We'll see you next year.
Want to know the answers to your deepest questions? Log on to discoverycourses.com. 15 totally free courses discuss spirituality, lifestyle, archaeology and health. Make your personal discovery today at discoverycourses.com.
Welcome back. Well, if there's one thing that's controversial amongst church circles, it's music. Ever heard of the worship wars? Well, here's, well, no, you're not really in the worship wars, are you? Really. Are you, Richard Magrath?
No.
No. You've left the worship wars because you're out there playing your saxophone in clubs and pubs and stuff, and goodness me, why? How? Please explain.
Short answer is that God's given me this gift to be able to play jazz, to be able to improvise, to be able to play the saxophone. So that's how I believe He wants me to glorify Him.
Is that a challenging thing spiritually? I mean, in those environments, that kind of music, which has, people tell you jazz has its roots in, sort of strip clubs and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, jazz was, was it?
Prostitute's perfume, I think, jasmine,
There's a few different, meanings for where that word came from. But yes, lots of Christians have said that in the past. Don't hear that much anymore. But yeah, it's what God's given me to do, so that's what I do.
One interesting thing you have done, Richard, is this sort of jam church idea. You've had, 30, 40 people packing themselves into your home, having church there. How did that come about?
Well, basically, as I grew as a Christian and as a musician, I realised that our current church culture is pretty much an anathema to creative people.
How so?
Worship music is usually pretty uncreative.
A bit formulaic. It's got to be easy to sing along with.
Exactly.
I mean, part
so
of how it works.
Usually for creative people or creative musicians, it's it's a real turn off.
Bit too predictable.
Yeah. And just genuine relating is actually hard to come across in many churches. So I believe God wanted me to start basically a parachurch. So something alongside the established church, the established local church that I was going to at the time. We would meet once every 2 months in our lounge room at home. And this really offered an opportunity to musicians who are very often single people or who are away from their families, or, there's often
isolated.
a lot of isolation in musicians because they dedicate so many hours to their music and so on. Anyway, it became like a family. And we'd have a jam, we'd have a Bible reading, I'd give a talk, or a friend of mine or friends of mine would give a talk, and we'd have prayer. And we just talk about the different issues that come up in the music industry and how we can support one another in that. And also just the encouragement to go to your local church, even though you might not like the music there or it might not be a cup of tea. just be a part of it.
Surprise, surprise, there's more to life than music.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
And your identity is not found in your music.
So this wasn't just a whim that sort of crossed your mind one lazy afternoon. You actually went and studied theology, studied ministry, and really were commissioned really to follow this path of reaching musicians through music.
Absolutely, and that really came through 12 years or so of when I became a Christian and I was a musician, and trying to navigate this really strange cultural path of Christian work or culture and music or secular work, and never the twain shall meet, it seemed. Yeah.
So when you are like playing in clubs, because you do still play in clubs and lots of live venues, people are drinking, people go there for all sorts of motivations, not all of them particularly savoury. How do you keep your spiritual life strong, your relationship with with God strong? How do you resist temptation? I mean, is it a negative atmosphere sometimes?
It can be, but I find pretty much anywhere in this world it can be a negative atmosphere. Just riding my motorbike coming here, there's all kinds of road rage and things that happen, so you don't have to go to a club to find that. I think, the classic things are just keeping in the Word, keeping in prayer, having people who you can really genuinely fellowship with is what's key.
But I think accountability sort of built into those close relationships.
Yeah, I think so. When you're doing what you do, just do it really well. Don't be slapdash. Do it excellently.
When you say that, though, Richard, I mean, there is a thing with this sort of virtuosity. I'm here to show, I know how to do all these trills and runs, and I have these incredible skills, and I know all the arpeggios and all the musos are in the crowd going, yeah, man, that guy's got it. But what about glorifying God? Like, where's that sort of balance between excellence, as you're talking about, and actually glorifying God rather than yourself? Is it difficult?
I suppose yes, it can be difficult. However, I do try to commit every performance to the Lord Jesus, and I do pray to Him, and I just say before I get on stage, this is for you, Lord. Everything I do, may it be for your glory. And that's what you do. You don't have to be singing or even talking about Jesus on the mic to be glorifying Him. I think people sense there's something going on when you do something really well, and when you honour people on the stage too, and you listen to their performance. There's something that we came up with a few years ago. We had a band called Salah, which was a 10-piece Christian ensemble, and we toured Turkey and Australia and preaching the gospel through music. And we had a bit of a saying, and that was other person-centred playing. Yeah. So the temptation in our selfish nature is to go for self-centred playing. Sure. But when Jesus becomes Lord of your life and you want to glorify Him, it becomes about other people. So we had this, basically a mantra, which was other person-centred. So whatever you're doing, you're actually focusing on the other people in your ensemble. And that takes the pressure off yourself, and it takes the competition away, which there can often be. Yeah. And it means that the audience can also enjoy what you're putting out, and they can really become a part of it too, and see that it's not all about me, me, me.
Yeah. Okay, so if I can take you back to some of this more ministry-focused stuff you've been doing in your home and elsewhere, have you, I mean, is this sort of a bit of a laugh and a bit of fun, hey, we're doing Christian Jam, or have you actually seen this have some sort of spiritual impact on people who are participating?
We have, praise God. There has been fruit. One fellow bass player I think of, he'd been brought up in Pentecostal circles, and he said to me once, he said, you know what, I knew that Jesus was Lord and I knew we should worship Him, but I just never knew why. I didn't quite get it, basically. In another way, I think he didn't actually understand the gospel. Wow. And so the focus was always to have good teaching from the Bible, and we had these things called worductions, where someone would read from the Bible or speak, or kind of do a mixture of singing and speaking, or shout, or whatever the passage dictated. Apocalyptic literature is great for this.
For shouting, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd have musicians just responding however they felt led.
In an improvised sort of way.
Yeah, and in an other person-centred way too. And
so this free jazz worship.
Yeah. It's kind of a mixture of all different sorts of things. And I'll never forget, we had a time once in our lounge room, we had 4 different keyboard players. There was a guy on our old Kawai piano, someone on a beautiful new keyboard, someone on an old Kawai 70s organ, and someone on some other keyboard, I can't even remember. But we had that, and a whole rhythm section, had someone on a horn. And we didn't record any of these things, so I can't refer to a website or anything. But they were really special times, and when God's word goes out, it just accomplishes what we know. It accomplishes what He desires, and I think this can happen in a really special way, in a creative context. And I don't think, in many ways, our Western church experience has embraced the arts in a way that it could. Wow. There's a lot more exploration we can do.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you say the word's going out, but you're also going out. And just quickly as we finish, you're heading for Europe.
That's right.
For more music ministry with migrants and artists and people over there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, God's, we believe, sending us to Berlin. We're going with ECM, and we're going to be in an area that's got heaps of refugees, migrants, creative people, musicians.
It's a real centre for jazz, isn't it, Billy?
It is. It's like New York of Europe. Everyone's there. Whatever you're into, it's there. And there's a massive need for the gospel to go out.
Incredible. Hey, well, God bless your ministry as you go out. It's going to be really exciting to see how that works out. And you have brought your horn in.
I have.
And after the break, Richard Maygraith will play an improvised, jazzed up version of O Come, Emmanuel. Is that right?
That's the one.
Excellent. Hey, hope you enjoyed the show this week. We'll see you next time.
Thousands of years ago, a series of ancient prophecies were disguised within a system of mysterious symbols. For centuries, these remarkable predictions have been sealed to the world until now. Check out our new Secrets of Prophecy online course today in 24 beautifully illustrated free studies at www.itiswrittenoceania.tv or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
Mm-hmm.